Okay, hi everyone, and thank you very much for joining our recorded video here of some of our reflections and learnings around how we've tried to and how we are trying to mobilise realist evaluation in practice. So, in terms of, and feel free to chip in on this one, Louis, in the kind of in a discursive way. One of the first things, obviously, that we do within a realist evaluation is that we sit down with people, we look at the program, we look at the intervention, or we look at whatever it is that's under examination, and try to come up with some real buy-in from people around how and why do people see programs working. So that's the first phase, which is obviously a previous session for people to look at. And in terms of testing assumptions and beliefs, this is about looking at these program theories or the assumptions and beliefs or the explanatory statements, which are quite often used interchangeably, to actually put these properly to the test. Do these actually hold? Do these make sense? Do they reflect the reality of what's going on? And there's a significant collaborative potential in there, whereby if we've got some buy-in from people in the start, in terms of being engaged and owning some of these assumptions and beliefs that we want to test, there might be more consciousness that's there for people to start to, see these through and say, okay, well, does this explanatory statement that I've come up with actually play out the way that I intend it to? Louis, did you want to add anything to this?
Yes, thanks, Kev. The phrase evaluation is everyone's business will constantly come up throughout these videos. So I think it's really important to stress when we're looking at the collaborative potential, trying to get that buy-in from the start, people engaged and owning the theories. It's really explaining that this is their program, this is what they're working on, spending their time on. And it's really important not only to support the evaluation and to foster that evaluative thinking, but actually to try and demonstrate the importance of understanding what is working, what isn't working, how and why in their program. So ultimately they can continue to support the program in whatever way they can with as much information to support them as possible.
Brilliant. And I was just going to say, Lou, I completely agree. And I think the crucial thing here is at the heart of testing our assumptions and our beliefs and our views around how and why we see something working is the how and the why. So as part of that testing and the different, research methods that we might use, which we're going to talk about in a second, the different research methods that we might use to help unearth the how and the why is a bedrock of testing these assumptions and beliefs.
Absolutely.
And of course, and of course, this phase is another session for you for you viewers to look at, is around how we start to refine these theories as well. In that, remember, a realist evaluation is made up of three kind of common phases. The first one is developing theory. The second one is testing theory, and then the third one is around using the learnings from the testing to refine, which is great for learning. It's great for reflecting on where do we go next with our work. So Louis, did you want to talk through this one? This is a nice example, isn't it, of an assumption and belief?
Yeah, so we wanted to begin with an example explanatory statement or assumption and belief, just so that we've got some context in terms of what we're going to be talking through, trying to explain what we mean by testing our assumption and belief. So this is an example that we drew up with some of the work in Essex, working with the sustainable travel team. So the idea was that traditional ways of working in silos reduce the awareness of objectives which align across the system. So sometimes people are working towards the same thing in the same organization or under the same roof, but actually they're not aware of that. So if we can align our objectives with those of the sustainable travel team, so perhaps other sector stakeholders through conversations, collaboration, then we will widen our sphere of influence and increase the use of physical activity as a potential solution to achieve our desired outcomes. So this desired outcome might be about hardwiring physical activity into the decisions made when it comes to active travel, because we will collectively understand what others are trying to achieve. So this is about a coordinated and shared vision. Actually, for the sustainable travel team, there should be a lot of physical activity when it comes to active and sustainable travel, whether that's cycling, walking, running, scooting. So this could be a really important part for them. So from a physical activity point of view, it's important to try and share that vision. Now, phase 2 of a realist evaluation, as we've talked about, testing. So we're testing our assumptions and belief. So when we're looking at that belief, we break it down to the context, the if, the then, and the because it's really important to almost not simplify, but to help us generate some questions based off of each thing, each area. So if we look at the context, okay, are we going to ask those questions around the awareness? Does the sustainable travel team, do they know about active ethics, and do they know that their work could align? When we talk about the sphere of influence and increase the use of physical activity, is this something that's important to the sustainable travel team? Is it already happening? And is it something that, if we can align our objectives to, actually, does that need to happen? So our job as testing, we can look at our assumption and belief, we can generate some questions, we can generate some ideas in terms of how we can test this to understand, does this theory hold? Is this correct, or does it need refinement? Now, in this phase, we want to explore, we're going to test the assumptions, and that's going to lead into phase 3 ultimately. So when we do test, we draw upon qualitative and quantitative research methods, and the focus is on the methods that help us, not necessarily that there's a right or wrong approach, but what is suitable for testing our beliefs, and that's something that will be part of the process. Now, Kev, would you like to talk through this?
Yeah, so this diagram, this visual, perhaps the immediate kind of reaction to this is it looks quite complicated, but in terms of just opening up what Louis has said, it is very straightforward, really. In terms of from left to right, we have a nice cyclical process, really, in terms of being able to test. And you know, I like what you said, Louis, in the previous slide in terms of, you know, investigating, exploring. It's the same type of thing, really. You know, we're trying to go deeper behind the surface of these explanatory statements, these assumptions and beliefs, to understand, you know, how and why is this assumption and belief starting to pan out. So here on the left, you know, we start with the assumption and belief. We start to identify, you know, what are the underlying questions we want to explore around this assumption and belief, and that's where it's a good opportunity to start to just, like, you know, list what are the key questions, what are those evaluation questions. So, for example, how does physical activity alongside other things influence decision making in the system, and why is physical activity a crucial part of sustainable travel? So what we're starting to do is really sort of like take apart and really sort of like go beneath the surface of this assumption and belief, to start to kind of, you know, explore and answer these questions. So there's obviously a number of ways in which we can explore and answer these questions, and that might be, for example, using a whole host of different research tools that are on our disposal. The good thing about a realist approach is that it's methods neutral. It doesn't favour one approach over another. It's very open in terms of what we can use. So, for example, interviews, focus groups, surveys, you know, using content analysis, for example, or simply, you know, working with the community, taking more participatory approaches to bring their insights and lived experiences in, is a great way to start to test and understand whether or not this theory or these assumptions and beliefs are panning out the way that they are. And of course, across all of these methods that you might use to test your theory, you know, we'll have different samples of people. So by sample, we're talking about, you know, well, how many people are going to take part in our interview? How many people are going to take part in our focus group, for example? And that then gives us what we call the data the insight, the information, the evidence to be able to support, refine, or refute these assumptions and beliefs that we're looking at. And then just the last thing to say there, Louis, is that this really does depend on the timeline as well. The timeline for testing these assumptions and beliefs. What is achievable, what's feasible.
Absolutely. And I think just to focus on community driven, this will be something covered in another workshop. So if there's any confusion around upside down, it will be covered a little bit more. But essentially the thinking is the traditional top down approach of the organisation, the funder, working down and giving instruction, giving funding to the community. Well, actually, can we flip that upside down, and maybe the community has more control, more power in that relationship. So some points for reflection. I think what we'd like to do is just to open up and say, do you have any assumptions and beliefs that you would like to test? This might not be something that you thought about before, or you just sort of new to the process. So just the idea of writing down, well, how do you think your program works? What are the beliefs about the program? So it might be around sport, around physical activity that you've been working on recently. Could you have a go at writing it down and then actually start to think, what are the underlying questions that are going to be part of this assumption belief that I can go out and I can ask, even on a light touch approach? This is everyone's business, and I think it's really important to try and foster that thinking amongst everyone, that it's not a case of someone dropping in and performing an evaluation and then handing over a report, but actually we want everyone to be involved. Not necessarily in the analysing of data or production of reports, but actually just involved in those conversations, trying to collect that information from the community, from participants. I think it's really important that we can try and mobilise staff and the workforce to contribute to that, so that they can start to understand the impact that their program's having as well. And how can we engage?
I'm sorry, Louis, to cut across you there. I think that's where it's really important as well, that in terms of it being everyone's business, that in all evaluation, the evaluation and what we uncover through the evaluation will lead to new learning. So if more people are involved in that, and more people are kind of consciously involved in that, there's more scope for that to kind of enhance the learning that people take on and the use that it fosters for action.
Brilliant. And to finish off, how can we engage others in the process? So it might be something that you personally have seen as well, that actually to be engaged in an evaluation, what is it that would help you become more involved in this, or your co-workers, your workforce, your community members? What would it take for them to be involved, to feel respected and part of the process as well, so that again we can really encourage that learning to be shared across as many people as possible, which is a really important thing that we're trying to promote at the minute. So Kev, just to finish off, is there anything you'd like to just summarize?
No, I think that's everything covered, Louis. I think that kind of covers what we were trying to capture today, which is to give people some kind of advice, or just some reflection really around what goes into the second phase of a realist approach to evaluation, in terms of exploring how and why these assumptions are actually unfolding in practice. And I think that we've managed to do that quite nicely, and just encourage the people who viewed this to also look at the other videos as well, and just say thank you for people's time.
Brilliant. Thank you. Right, let's stop recording.
How long was that one, Lou?